Hail to my warriors. Hail to all. We're getting close. Penultimate chapter today. Do more. Today, for chapter 53, a horn of wine. And I'm wearing some tartan. So, with no more introduction, I will get into it. Chapter 53. The Battle of Fulford. September the 20th, 1066. Rally! Shouted the crier as he rode through the camp on a horse. Rally and ready! We march north, the arrows have come! Rally! His ride had come to the end of the encampment, and he slowed to a stop, then turned once more around his steed. Hold there, messenger! Come ye here and tell us their news, Ragnar called in his Scots accent. I have only instruction to tell of the marching north, the man replied dismissively. I and the rally. Come and tell us what it is. Here will be a coin for your troubles. I don't intend to demand of a man what I'm not willing to pay for him. Hvitbjorn stood from where he'd been sitting in the morning fire with another cup of coffee at Sigurd's generosity. He walked over just as Ragnar and the crier were done a fierce haggling over price. What is the news? The earls of Hvitbjorn and Morcar have come. They are from Northumberland and Mercia. We're going to fight them. We go north to Jorvik for a fight. That was nae worth 5 pieces of silver. You give that back. Ragnar rolled his shoulders and gave the man a disapproving look. No, wait. He looked around conspiratorially and more than a little wary. We aren't making for the city itself, Jorvik. We make for a small place to the south of it called the Full. That is where the English will be. That's where we'll come on them. They don't know we are this close, though. Edward and Morcan were their names. Which one is Mercia and which one is Northumbria? I don't know which is which, but they are sure to have well-ready armies. Apparently, our fighting and raiding has been told far and wide in these lands. We are now famed in all of England, like the great heathen army we are. Ragnar come back to slay his old enemy. You know, it was near here that the famous Ragnar was killed. Was it truly? That's a canny piece of knowing that is. The crier looked at Ragnar with an expression that indicated he had no idea what he'd said. Thank you, friend. Here, have another silver from me. The man reached for it, but Hvitbjorn pulled back just an instant too soon. Where will Harald be arraying his forces? What flank will the king take? Have surveyors been sent out to scout the place and see where the fight should be? The man eyed the coin with pursed lips, deliberating. He means to plant the land ravager down and take the bridge. There's a bridge on the creek near the river Ouse, and he'll hold that place. Anyone else will have to be fighting in a swamp. And what's more, is he'll have only his strongest retinue there with him. I'd fight close to that rank if I had the chance. Likely we wouldn't get a choice in the matter, Ragnar said. Aye, and the king won't actually be there in the line, I don't think. Though he could believe his own legend enough this time. Well met, messenger. Take this and go. Ragnar, come. Prepare all of them for the march. We should be armored and prepared to go in... What the hell? As Hvitbjorn and Ragnar walked toward the cruise, he chanced to glance behind him and saw that many were already making march for the north. What? Oh, those fuckers! They're already going! We have to get all ready faster if we're gonna catch the battle at all! Hvitbjorn grunted, annoyed. Fuck you, Harald. Go do it. We have a quarter of an hour, and we rush from here. We are not missing this fucking fight. Remember, I want every bow and spear brought. We will have the swamp to cut them down in, and if they try to cross it, we'll make it miserable for them. Aye, Lord. Arrows, spears, and javelins coming up. Wait, we're taking the swamp side? Wasn't Harald taking the bridge with his strong banner? Aye, he is. For this time, that's the farthest place from where I want us. These English earls aren't ready for our force. No, today is not the day. Ragnar sighed at his friend and lord's mysterious talk, as he often did. For Bodil then. Skull. Right, you lot. The captain here has called all warriors to their post. Get your arms on and fall up ready to go. If you dinna have your gambers upon you in that time, and that's too damn bad. You're fighting the English and you're skinny. Everyone leapt to action as Ragnar walked menacingly through the camp and barked orders. Breakfasts were abandoned. Tents were tied close. Everyone grabbed a friend and helped each other armor themselves as they all brandished weapons and shields. Only 20 minutes later, the crews of the longships were marching past a mostly empty camp heading north. There were many other crews who were still arming and readying and would make for north when they were prepared. Hvitbjorn thought Harald marching without his full force was folly, but the man was clearly deeply confident and thought he could hold the battle with what he brought. Hvitbjorn, however, never liked to leave anything to chance, and so spoke with his best fighters to secure their plans before the battle to come. A line of shields and spears, javelins behind these, archers behind them. Instructions were passed to all. They had time to strategize during their march through the woods, but they all knew what they were doing. As they arrived at the place of battle, they were to fall in to the right side and prepare to fight the English if they tried to ford the swamp. They would, however, wait. If the English stayed where they stood, and hopefully narrow the fight to the bridge, to Harald's side. They arrived at the battle, and fighting had not yet begun. To all their relief, it was a difficult thing to join a battle underway, as everyone was going to start telling you where to deploy, if there were any sense of battle lines anyway. As a rule, they didn't like that at all. They knew how they liked to fight, and didn't want some pompous lieutenant directing them somewhere stupid. Oh, shit, Hvitbjorn said as he looked over the ground. Ragnar, look there. He pointed to the English left's flank across the swamp. There was not so much of a treacherous ground between them. Rather, it was more a ditch that was not too deep and not too wide. There was a boggy terrain, but it wouldn't be some great imposition to cross, and the English were watching as far as more Northmen reinforced Harald's position. They're going to break this stall and come forward. They have no choice. Just as he spoke, horns were sounded, and the English line started to advance swiftly. He spoke the last of his sentence as the English started the advance. They all walked together as a coordinated block, and though they were swift, they were not rushing and not breaking formation. Watching a well-disciplined advance of a cohesive enemy unit was terrifying. It meant they knew what they were doing, and they meant to kill you. Lord, what do we do now? Ragnar asked. Hvitbjorn looked over the disposition of Harald's army on the right flank, a collection of longship crews, who were well versed in fighting, but were unused to fighting together in a collected army unit. The English discipline and structure was going to crush them. Fuck! We need to be a base floor. They cannot fall past. This is going to buckle if they don't have a strong line to reinforce them. Should we run them from the flank? Asked Skadhild, hefting her heavy war axe in anticipation. No, we would just push them further through those men. We need to come up behind our ally first there and expect them to fall back. Then we emerge as a strong wall while the English advance in their excitement. They should be some tired by then. As long as we do not break, we will take this day. What is Harald doing? Harald and his retinue of apparently much stronger elite units were holding their place and not advancing. A narrow bridge lay across the ditch between he and the English force there, who they did not know was the Earl Edwin of Northumbria, faced their number with unflinching resolve. Will he not help his own people as they struggle in the mud? He asked more rhetorically. He could at least let his right side launch some arrows. Wait, archers and javelins to the front! Loose as soon as you are in range. We need to help those front ranks. Do not abandon your shield formation. The Skaldborg. The back of the right flank were all looking over their shields at the tumult before them, each, no doubt, showing their eagerness to join the fight and thanking the gods they were not in it. The English were no longer advancing lightly. They had crashed forward with the momentum of a great winter wave and did not relent. Here the English fought like champions, like heroes. For them, these were not some summer raiders come again for a crop or to take their livestock. Here were the enemy who'd ravaged this land, their homes, for centuries. And here they fought with the gathered anger of hundreds of years of fight. Here they avenged their fathers and showed their passion for their home of England. Loose! Hvitbjorn shouted in command, and his rank of warrior Vikings loosed. A volley of missiles came pelting from over the heads of defending Northmen and was followed immediately by a second. Hold the line! Shouted Hvitbjorn, and others took up the call. Hold the line! They all shouted. Hold the line! And with that spell spoken, the wall materialized before the English advance. They were stopped dead in a moment of impact as they crashed into the unflinching and solid wall. Hvitbjorn's shields formed through the spread out warriors, and upon this floor, the English stopped. And push! Harald watched with pursed lips and slight amusement. The right flank of his army pressed the rather steadfast determination. They were doing well, and he'd get the credit for it all. Harald nodded to himself and looked about him at his best men, all standing together and ready to crush the enemy. Plant my flag, he said, with his characteristic equanimity. Plant the land ravager here. The force of the right flank were all making their rally well and had organized into a proper ordered line and were pushing back against the English. Here we push. Here we take my kingdom. Push and take the bridge and take their force. Push to the other side and devastate them. Ravage them. Let this Harald of England feel the shudder as my force destroys more of these English in their rank. Go! At these commands, the Northmen all worked for his order. The standard was put into the ground. It shook thunderous as it speared into the wet English soil, and the forces of Harald of Norway advanced in the frenzy of their fervor. They pressed across the ditch built at the Full, not only the small bridge, but over the ditch too, and slammed into the English force there. The advance was met with fierce and faithful English soldiers, and they were almost immediately pushed back. Almost. The English defense there was incredible, fierce, and not enough. There, the force of Harald bullied their way against the lines, and the weight of their attack strained every inch of the English. King Harald Sigurdsson of Norway, sword in hand, fought with his men just behind the front line. He knew he wasn't supposed to. He knew it was more of a king's duty to stay and prepare his troops for more of the warring. And he didn't care. Not today. Einar wasn't close enough to stop him. Today he fought with his men. Let them put that in the fucking stories. The Land Ravager propels us ahead. Here we drive them. With his well-made long sword, he hewed at the front behind the shield wall. His men all fought with such bravery and brilliance the advantage of the Land Ravager. There before him, the English were not doing anywhere near as well as the ones who'd ran across the Full to strike at his right flank. That right side was made up of all the younger and less experienced commanders. They could absorb the energy of the stronger English assault. He'd deal with them after he was done, and he would seem the hero. This day would be his again. The Danelands would not come to heel, not under his rule. He could not reclaim together the full span of Canute the Great's empire for himself. That damned man Svein still held too strong. And now there was between them a tacit peace, forced to sign when he went off in search of Haakon. The lands of the Hvitbjorn were so damned isolated in their rule and united in their peoples that approaching them for his dominion would be ludicrous. The court at Kiev might still be his. He had a claim through his wife, so now he needed only for the fantastically successful monarch Yaroslav to die. But Yaroslav had died. He suddenly remembered. He died some 12 years earlier, and his wife Elisiev had demanded a day of mourning for him. The new Grand Prince was some Slav. He was sure of it. The home of Kiev then would most likely not be his to claim. Where had it all gone to? Why had it all slipped so far down? Danelander, Svitjod, the Rus, all would not comply to his rule. What was left were his vassal states in the north of the Scots, the Faroe Isles, and of course his law in Norway. This was all that was of his empire. All that rage, all that failure, all of it fueled his need to conquer this fucking island, here and now. Once England was his, he could press that advantage, order the remaining soldiers here to invade Francia, redouble his efforts on the Danelands, and perhaps his relations in Svitjod would be better plied for fealty. He needed to rule. He deserved to rule it all. It was the only thing he ever remembered wanting. He watched as the elite forces pummeled their way across the English on the right flank and had no interest in ordering them to stay their rampage and simply run down the enemy as they fled. Let them take what they will. If this King Harald could not stand to protect his people that would die for him, then they would do so until they chose a new king, a better king. The fight in the ditch on the Northmen's right flank was going well. The structure adopted had worked to halt the English aggression, and now it was best and but a test of the discipline either mustered. The English right side had buckled under the weight of Harold's advance, and the slow grinding of the ferocious left flank was becoming more of a certainty. Hvitbjorn watched with great intent as he stalked behind the action of the battle. They were doing well, and his crews had formed a solid line the enemy was trying to break, but could not. All the while, as he watched the battle, he looked for the man who held his axe. If that man fell, Hvitbjorn could take back what was his, and if he saw him, he could go and claim it for himself. But he didn't see him at all. You there, Captain! Push some in the center right. There, you are losing ground. And come here. I need your men to hold back a little. What? Why? If they push too far forward, they will. You risk the whole line. Hold here with the rest of the shields, and you will see a great victory. Let the enemy come and shred themselves on your swords. Volley! Someone called, and Hvitbjorn put his shield up over he and the captain he'd called. An arrow slammed into it a moment later as others fell around them. We need to push now, the captain insisted. Those volleys are only going to keep coming. Not yet, Hvitbjorn replied authoritatively. You leave a place for the English to run up behind us, and you could throw the whole line, a whole battle. We need to hold here, where we'll have place to make advantage. We need our own archers to stay and hold. Who the fuck gave you command? Must have been Odin, for none other was taking it enough. Heathen, the man replied haughtily. I'm a Christian. That explains that. Go now, Christian. Get your men back in line. Yes, Lord, the man said reluctantly. Volley! Oi, White Bear, we're holding firm, but these bastards are nae backing out. I'm nae saying we'll lose, but I think. An arrow then landed through the back of Ragnar's neck, just at the juncture between the helm and the gambeson under it. The point of the arrow jutted out from his throat, having cut to the top of the breastbone, where it forced its way through. Ragnar, Hvitbjorn said in stunned calmness. Ragnar sputtered, and blood sprayed from his mouth. He locked eyes with Hvitbjorn and fell to the earth. Ragnar! He said more passionately now, and knelt to his friend. The man was reaching up for his helm, trying to pull it free, and his eyes showed fear. It'll be all right. You'll live this. You can still fight. Ragnar! He still fumbled at the helm strap, but Ragnar stopped his movement, grabbing his hand. Then he grunted. Bubbling blood emerged from his lips, and he looked at Hvitbjorn with intense eyes. Not the helm, those eyes seemed to say. Hvitbjorn let the man his movement, and then Ragnar pulled on a chain that was under his gambeson. From the other side of the blood-soaked arrow, he pulled free the cross that he wore around his neck and held it firm in hand. Gods, Ragnar, I don't know how to pray for you. I'm sorry. The man's eyes softened then. There was forgiveness in that expression. Through his wheezing and gurgling breaths, he looked on Hvitbjorn with a last look of peace. Hvitbjorn nodded and held his hand with the cross in it. Go to your God, my friend. Long have I blessed my own gods to have known you in this world. A better friend, I think no man. Ragnar! The man's eyes had glazed over, and he looked unseeing at this world. His final expression one of peace and acceptance. His holy symbol clutched tight in his hand. But Hvitbjorn didn't want peace. He grabbed a sword that was near him and rose to stare at the massing English. This death would be avenged. They are retreating, called a man from the front. What? No! He dashed over the body of his friend and made for the front, desperate to persecute those who'd killed his oldest friend. Ragnar was dead. His laughter and jibes were gone. Never again would he call him laddie. Never again would he sing songs of his terrible home. Lord Whitebeard, Stephen said, holding him back. He looked past and saw Ragnar's body. Gods! Elsmond then joined to hold back the Hvitbjorn. Get back here! Get to my axe, you dog! He shouted in rage as tears streamed down his face. No, come back! Come, you fucking! He dropped to his knees in the chaos of his emotions and sat there numbly as Skadhild arrived and knelt to hold him. He's gone! They're gone! You can't do anything. Hold here, Whitebeard. Hold. She gripped him tight. I lost them all, he said. I lost every one of them. They were all that was left beside the revenge. How can that be what lasted longest? How can I live with only that? Why is it always hatred? Why must that be our story? Always we hate and kill. What is it even for? Skadhild heard nothing of this, as it was said too quietly. I will pull a rune for you. You will overcome this. You have to. We still need you, Lord. We all still need you. He looked exasperated at the fleeing English, focusing every time on when another one of them was killed. He knelt there, feeling a complete lack of energy, barely feeling anything at all. He was covered in blood, the blood of his oldest friend, as Skadhild held him, not knowing what to do. That night he sat with the exuberant and celebrating army. He drank from Ragnar's horn, sat on the ground and faced the fire, and still faced the quiet emptiness. What was there left? He wondered the question again. He, as he had too many times this night, the mead in the horn remained untouched, and he pondered again about what to do. It happened when Bodil died. Havald and Inga, Niels, now Ragnar. They were his family. They were his fighting Varangian, and he didn't know what to do. He still had Skadhild, and Orm, and Ulf, and Gisle. Gisle, she was distraught this night, crying and drinking with the others, but unable to process her grief in a way she wanted, where it would be over. They had been lovers and friends, and that had been so much to her, to any of them on this journey of the warrior raider. Now, she didn't have that, and he didn't either. He knew he was their commander. They all drank and caroused in high spirits, though they were quiet and careful around him. He knew he should be better for them, to give them the strong leader that was needed for this war. He wanted to be that leader, that proud and brave figure they could each follow, and perhaps again he would be. The image of Harald appeared in his mind, his commander, his nemesis, his king, his friend. Had they been friends? They'd spoken. Hvitbjorn had been there with the man he blamed for his father and mother's fates, and to all eyes he'd stood as the sentry guard for the man. Is that why I'm still alive? I have to kill Harald and Stephen. Is it vengeance that still fuels this life? Am I forced to lead? I know well these were my goals, my schemes, my destiny. What of that? He remembered a vision he'd had a long time ago. The sisters all spinning strands of light that floated up through the tree to become the fates of men. One of those strands were his own. And there was more, he remembered, a woman, her drink of mead that shared after the night on his fur, that had changed the whole course of his life. Gertrude, he said, remembering the woman, beautiful, powerful. He couldn't remember what she sounded like, barely remember what she looked like. That was a lifetime ago. And in that time, he had learned the lessons that Völva had made for him. Celebrations, lightness of Hugur. Had he achieved in his life a flame worthy of these titles? Had he brought forth the kind of life the gods would delight in? The white bear had conquered. He had destroyed and killed, waged a war on two kings at the same time. Had everything taken away from him and built it all back and lost it all again. Now he sat with everything he had that had befallen him. Loss, gain, victory, utter defeat. What was left for a man like this? He'd never be king. He'd never have a family. His life was not structured properly for a family. He'd had Sidun, and if the violence had reached her, there was nowhere safe around him. Hvitbjorn looked up. The violence was still there. It always would be. That was his gift. That he could still hold on to. It would kill him ultimately, but he could warm himself by it until it did. Stephen and Harald were still alive, and he had a vow to kill them both. That could bolster his resolve for life. Perhaps that was why he could not see Valhall in his visions. He hated the idea of accepting this as his fate, losing the light that warmed his father. Could he condemn the man to eternity in hell? He didn't know that a glorious death in battle would be his to claim. No, he said aloud. What am I thinking? All that I've done, all the killing, the eating and sailing, the riding and the love, all the love and the celebration I have shared in this life, that was my glory. That is my glory. These things, he said to the fire, to his father, to Niels and Ragnar and Bodil and Inga and Havald, and to Sidon. My love for all of you has been in the celebration of my life. His eyes widened at the realization. He was a violent man, more than many, even among these warriors. He'd led a life of violence and force. He had killed countless men, and yet that was not what his life had to mean. Though he knew and accepted it would likely mean little to any living, none knew him. But they did know him. They knew him as the White Bear, but they still knew who he was. They knew his strength, his leadership and support, his command, and the fight that was his. He needed to let go this apathy, for this especially was not him. Should they make a speech? He wondered. He watched them all share drinks and story. Gisle had 2 women and a man around her sharing her grief. Skadhild had gone off to seek out a lot of food to eat and probably someone to fuck. I don't need to tell them anything. They have each other. I helped give that to them. Let that be my glory. That one's for the chapter. This, the wee little horn of Scotch, the barley malt that Ragnar was so fond of. This one is for the mad bastard Christian Scott, Ragnar, one of my favorite characters that I've ever written. Even now, I can't remember if I've said that for literally every other character that I've killed off. For Bodil, and for Hafald, and for Inga, and for Niels, and then Olaf, and for Harald, and for Stefanos, and for Ragnar, and for you. Thank you again for joining and being a part of this. Next time, the last episode, next time, it shall be our last foray together. For now. Farewell. Brilliant. Until next time.